Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults, a podcast dedicated to supporting survivors of cults and human trafficking. This show is hosted by myself, Anonymous Andrew.
And my name is Melody. I'm going to be Andrew's co-host. I'm also a cult survivor myself from a cult called the House of Yahweh. I am a cult advocate and creator and administrator of a cult support group on Facebook called Cult Escape and Recovery. For guests on our show, we do want them to understand that we respect privacy concerns. You can always remain anonymous or use a fake name.
And Melody, this is a safe haven for those who have been in a cult, survived, and escaped, and are now on a journey of recovery, trying to put their life back together. So join us as we learn together about the culture of cults.
And Andrew, we also want to add a trigger warning that some episodes may contain explicit subjects including sex abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other potentially disturbing topics.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults. And my name is Anonymous Andrew, and with me is Melody. Hello, Melody.
Hi, Andrew. Today we are going to be doing another transfer from the Anonymous Andrew podcast. This time it's an interview that you did with Alana McKenzie. So again, this is an episode where you're not going to hear Melody because Melody wasn't part of this. This is when Andrew first got interested in cults through the TFU. Alana is an expert in feminine energy, and she offered to come on the show and discuss the idea of TFU. And she discusses the idea of being told who to love and how dangerous that can be. And we certainly, when you see that and see the way TFU does that with people, it becomes extremely dangerous. And then she also goes in depth about the idea of using the mirror exercise and the proper and improper way, and how TFU abuses the idea of the mirror exercise. I remember her going into that when I listened to the episode. And then she also discusses the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So here is the episode.
Yeah, and when I was doing TFU, she was the only expert, and I'll use that word expert because she is a coach, or I forget what her degree is, but she was a guest on my show for her practice.
Yes.
She came forward and asked if she could comment on that, and I was looking for experts to come on and talk, because the whole idea of cults just boggled my mind, and to get her insight on it was great. I just wanted to mention something, that when we open up this show to the people that are listening, it's the name of the show is Cultimatum, the culture of cults, but the podcast is also about human trafficking. I don't want anybody who's listening, because Melody and I are actually negotiating right now with some guests who are victims of human trafficking. So when you hear me open up and I don't mention human trafficking, I want everybody to know that we do include human trafficking, and we're working on getting some guests to come on the show. I just forgot to.
We're hoping that we're going to have an episode with a human trafficking guest soon. I mean, Rebecca was our closest because she had a little bit of both in her story.
Correct. And there's somebody on one of the Facebook groups who runs a group that we're trying to. She's already agreed to come on. It's just a scheduling conflict. And the group that she runs has 1,200 people in it. And I'm positive we'll get more people to come forward to talk about their stories about human trafficking. So I just didn't want people that are listening to feel like we're leaving them out. We're not. We're working on getting some stories from there. So it's in the works. All right, let's get on to Alana, and we'll talk on the other side.
Yep.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of Anonymous Andrew. And today, in my continuing series, investigating the Twin Flames universe, I have with me Alana McKenzie. And that name may or may not sound familiar to you yet, because she did an episode with me about a year ago. Well, first, let me welcome Alana. Alana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Having you again. Okay, let me explain that. So Alana and I met back in September of 2023, and we recorded an episode, and in typical fashion in my universe, it got lost. So it's being resurrected, and it will be airing very shortly, hopefully next weekend. But in the meantime, Alana and I reconnected about the Twin Flames universe, and I've invited her back on to discuss the cult. Let's just get it out there right there. They're a cult.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a little bit on Alana is she's a dating coach, and she has her own dating service called Sovereign Dating. So Alana, tell us a little bit about that, and then let's get right into the Twin Flames.
Yeah, very, very briefly, because we're here for the twin flame stuff. But kind of how it relates, I guess, is this word sovereign, right? Which in my world means sovereign as in you are governing yourself.
Correct.
And so the difference between something like what we see happening in the twin flames universe in relationships is like someone else tells you what to do. Someone else tells you who to love and who to be. And in my version of dating and relationships, that is the opposite of love.
Correct. Absolutely.
And the opposite of relating to someone in a healthy way. And so that's where my concern lies, because what I want to teach people is how to recognize themselves and be sovereign in themselves and love from that place and really love other people from that place as well, loving themselves and loving other people from this place of self-awareness and compassion and true intimacy. Whereas what I have seen, and again, I was never part of the Twin Flames universe, but from what
Thankfully.
I've seen, yes, exactly, very grateful for that. But you know, what I know about it is that it's about control, and it's about the outside, like someone from the outside telling you how to love and what's right for you, and then again it got even deeper, right, as we saw, is like telling you who your gender is and who to love and all of this kind of stuff. And so I just advocate for the opposite.
It's
That's it.
all right. Let's let me bring. I want to talk about something you just mentioned. Being told who to love, or in the very first 10 minutes of the Amazon documentary, which is called Seeking Soulmate, Escaping Twin Flames. Mm-hmm. There was a I forget her name. Oh, I have it right here. The woman who actually did Alice Hines with Vanity Fair. She went there. So the Amazon documentary is about her trip to Michigan to stay with them for a couple of days and do what they thought was like an interview, and of course it turned out to be the Amazon documentary. But in the first 10 minutes, they actually the police show up at the door, and they ask Jeff if they can come in and talk to him, and he was like, I don't really want to. And they say something like, well, it's either here or down at the station, which is what you always hear when they say that. And so Jeff lets them in, and he asked them, why are you here? And he says, well, we're getting calls that you are controlling people and brainwashing them to do things that against their will. And his answer was, how can I make somebody do something that they don't want to do? And within a 5-minute span, he convinced them that everything was up on the up and up. And now, I don't know if they played the entire tape or if the police released it, but the police basically said, thank you for your time, and walked out. You know, almost like they accepted Jeff's answer. And no, this was recorded several years ago. They're still up and running.
Yeah.
So anyway, I only brought that up because they were talking about even the police and they're aware that Jeff and Shalia are controlling and brainwashing these people who are vulnerable. Let's talk about that. Let's.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, there isn't a law against that,
Right.
How can you measure that? And so, yeah, the police, that's lovely people are calling them, but they're not going to be who can really affect change in this case, right? They're not doing anything illegal. They're selling ideas, right? Which people have sold ideas for a very long time.
Very long time.
We were just talking about the beginning of the twin flame concept before we started recording, and that dates back to the Greeks, which the Greeks were excellent at, it wasn't selling ideas necessarily, because the money was quite quite different.
No, but it was philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what that kind of time period was about, was this real bursting forth of philosophy and philosophical ideas. And what Jeff and Shalia are doing is they've created some ideas, and they are selling them very effectively, I would say, too. Very, very effectively. And the reason that I would say that's happening is because they are specifically targeting people who are vulnerable. And that is people who are heartbroken, right? Like people who have just experienced some kind of relationship trauma, or have lost the person that they feel they need to be with, or something like that. Like the twin flames concept is perfectly positioned to be for people who just are heartbroken, like absolutely feel their life purpose has been dashed and their love is gone, right? And so that's a very vulnerable place to enter into a community, and especially a community that promises to fix your problem. Like a community that says you can have what you want. Yeah.
So let's, of course, I'm going to do this. I'm going to insert myself and my story into this. So a year and a half ago or so, I left a relationship, or the relationship disbanded. But for almost 2 years, I thought this person was my soulmate, which I want to talk to you about in a minute. And I might have even gone as far to say that I might have thought she was my twin flame. And when I found out what she was doing, and it was all lies and blah, 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 and I got out, I was that vulnerable person that you were talking about. I was destroyed. I was down and out. I was a shell of a man. I thought my world was over. And at the time, my soulmate was ripped away from me. And how, I mean, this is, of course, you don't know the answer to this, but you say they're preying on the people like that. So I would have been a victim had I come across their website, or if I Googled, heartbroken, and I don't know how they're marketing, but they're not targeting people like they're not looking on the internet to find people who are people are coming to them, is the way I understand it. Mm-hmm. What there's a question in there somewhere. What would make somebody like myself, who was heartbroken, look them up and say, "Oh, I'm going to pay $8,000 or $6,000 or whatever the even introductory cost is"? Are they that vulnerable that they would pay that?
Well, here, I think I know where you're getting at.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Let's answer that.
Okay.
So it starts, this is how, you called them a cult, and this is how you can identify them as a cult, is because it starts slowly. Like there's a process of indoctrination that happens.
Okay.
Right? So, first you're just looking. And this is what happened to me too, because I also had one of those life-shattering heartbreaks that you're talking about. That's what's in my book, The Art of Feminine Seduction, which is all about how I moved past that kind of feeling of loneliness and disempowerment in love. Like I can't have what I want. So when you're in that place of loneliness and like, I don't know, for me it was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, right? Because I just could not find love. Like I just could not find relationship. So I went looking on the internet, and I watched a lot of YouTube. Like I watched a lot of YouTube and read articles and books, and I was seeking. So that's how it just starts, right? Like you're just seeking to find an answer to what's wrong, and where I had gotten to was like, it's got to be me, because it had been, over a decade of
me too. I say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so at that point you're kind of seeking. You're like in the seeking stage, right? And so then if you find these people who tell you they have the answers, right? That's very reassuring at one point. It's just like, you know what? you can fix this, right? There's hope for you, right? So you're getting into the hope of the situation again. And then they bring in community, right? So you join the Facebook group or one of their little community.
Which they have, yeah.
Yeah. And so then you start to get deeper into the indoctrination is what we can call it, right? So it's like these are the ideas that lead to you finding love. And they've got the coaches in there telling you, here's what to do next and here's what to do next. Like you're being set on a path at that point. And this is where people start to talk about like drinking the Kool-Aid. Like that's where
Right.
you're drinking the Kool-Aid, because you're not being told specifically, like do what Jeff says or you're bad, but you're starting to get into this mode of being where you're like, this is the answer. This is the answer. And you kind of keep going down that path of these people have what I need. And then you're being sold to. And this is where I get upset, because I also hear about the bullying that happens at this point, and the pressure that happens at this point, and the the taking down. And for me, that's like kicking people when they're down already, because, people who feel lonely and feel like they don't have the love that they want in their life are looking for someone who tells them how to have that, and then to just be, like told they're doing it wrong because they're not paying money to join something, is like, that's a major red flag. But of course you're not thinking about that when you're just looking for the answer of how to find love. Like you're not like, oh, am I being manipulated, or am I being bullied here, right? Like, am I being bullied? You're really looking for the answer of love. That's really it.
And I was exactly, so you said after your heartbreak you jumped on YouTube and the internet. I did a little bit of that, but at that time I was already a big podcast fan. Like I was already listening, because over the past several years I was in relationships that I found myself always apologizing, I'm sorry, whatever. And I came across podcasts at one point back in, I guess, 2015, 2016, and that caught my my attention. So for some reason, YouTube never did anything for me, and I don't know why. And I even have a YouTube channel, and I post videos, but whatever. I turned to podcasting. Thank God I didn't find anybody that was trying to suck me in, because I might have even given them money just to get me out of that. Because you go down a rabbit hole, right? When you break up, you really, or if you're broken up with and and they abused you. All right, there's something I'd like to talk about. You talked about like drinking the Kool-Aid, or getting fed the Kool-Aid, and they do something called the mirror exercise. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Is that a real thing, or is that something they made up, or is it something they took and twisted?
They took it. I can't remember where that work originated, but it's been used by other cults before. Like it's not, it's not.
It's not new.
Oh, yeah, it's not just a new thing for them, and I believe that at a certain level it could be used to transform yourself in certain ways. Like, again, if we talk about like the path of moderation, like any kind of transformational work can help you. But when it's done, again, with that level of control and sort of like, that's always the answer, like that's the answer. Because that was, again, the impression I got from these, media
right.
things. Again, not having been in the group, but the impression I got was like, that's the answer. And anytime again you're told like this is the answer, that's when you should maybe take a step back.
Yeah.
Because it's like maybe some mirror work could help you identify some patterns of victimhood or something in your life, but to say that that's like the answer to any feeling you have or any thought you have or any experience you are going through is in my opinion very silly. Like that's just
well no. and ironically, or I did some of that in the early days after my breakup, because the woman that I was with before she broke up with me, or actually after she broke up with me, she actually sent me a very nasty email and said something to the effect of, number one, I am no longer attracted to you, because in the beginning she put me on a pedestal, told me how attractive I was,
Right.
and she took that back by saying some very mean things, and then she also told me that I will never find anybody as beautiful as her, which
Yeah.
she was beautiful, but she fed me these lines. So
Yeah.
now I am down this rabbit hole thinking that I'm ugly, that I'm unlovable, that I will never find anybody, whether beautiful or not, again, all this stuff. And I don't remember how, who, or where, but somebody told me to go into the bathroom and look in the mirror and start doing self-love.
Yeah.
So look at yourself in the mirror and say, you are a good person, and you are handsome, or you are whatever. You feed yourself self-love. What they're doing in Twin Flames is, so if you and I are together and you tell me that you don't love me, I'm supposed to go look in the mirror and go, she doesn't love me because I don't love me, or something. They
Yeah,
twist it.
right.
Yeah, and they make it your fault. They almost make it like everything that happened was your fault,
Yeah.
or that they want you to say that in the mirror. And I just can't imagine looking in the mirror and saying it. I'm ugly because if you tell me that I'm ugly because I think I'm ugly. This is the
Yeah.
train of thought that they're using, or the methodology they're using. All right.
Yeah. And what I found disturbing was that it didn't seem to be self-practiced.
Right.
Like there was a lot of projecting on the part of Jeff, we can just say. Because Shalia was like a little quiet, mouth zipped, didn't seem to have anything to say. But Jeff was very vocal about, and even yelling, right? Like
Yes.
abusive again, like very aggressive.
And the language.
Yes. And that was not, I did not see like, this is a person who takes radical self-responsibility. That was not
no.
the impression I got from him at all. So for that to be like the cornerstone of their work was very suspect to me, because there is such thing as like radical responsibility, which in my opinion would look something like, if you have decided that because someone sends you an email telling you're ugly, that means you're ugly, the responsibility for yourself there is like, I gave someone else the power to decide what I look like.
Yeah.
That's my responsibility. But it's not your fault that someone's calling you ugly. Like that's just on them. Like that's on them. It's only on you to how much you let it in, right? It's only on you how much you believe them, I guess, right?
Well, and that goes back to if you're feel like your twin flame, your soulmate, your lover has left you, or in my case, I think it was a mutual breakup because I had to finally walk away. But you're so devastated, so deep down in that rabbit hole that you will. We're going back to being the vulnerable. You're almost willing to believe or hear or like you said. She called me. I don't think she actually said I'm ugly. She just said I'm no longer attracted to you. But she did make it sound like you'll never find anybody because I found you attractive. Whatever. Yeah. It's horrible. It was horrible.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is when you've created this intimate connection with someone, you're in love with them. What they say does matter.
It does matter.
In a relationship, it does matter. And the words, right? This is why our family has so much power to hurt us, because we care about them, right? We care about the words that the people we care about use for us and say to us. And so, again, to just say like, the answer is always go to the mirror and tell yourself, that you felt something or you did something and it's about you, is oversimplification for one thing, and also horrible in at another level, because then you're not even really addressing the relationship also,
right,
which is what's at stake there, because what happens when someone insults you or is aggressive to you or bullies you or any of the negative things that happen to us in relationship is that's a wound in the relationship, and yes, how you respond to the wound matters. That's true. But also, you don't deserve to be hurt. Like, you don't deserve to receive nasty emails, right? Like, you don't deserve to be abused emotionally. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, you said something before about that's why our families can hurt us. There's a saying that only people that we love or that love us can truly hurt us. The people like a stranger can't hurt you in that way. So if I walked up to a stranger on the street and said, I don't love you because you're ugly, I think I would, if somebody said that to me on the street, I'd look at them like they were crazy and walk away, and I don't think it would really bother me. Mm-hmm. But coming from somebody who you spent many, many beautiful times together and you thought that there was something there. Let's talk, I think this is a good segue into soulmates and the actual concept of twin flames. Before we started recording, you said you don't necessarily believe in that concept. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, for sure. So twin flames comes from this idea, again, from the Greek, that some people are split, their soul has been split in two, and so then there are two people on Earth walking around, and that's your twin flame, right? So if you've been a separated soul, essentially. You've been a soul that's split in half, and so your other half is somewhere out there on Earth. And then we get, this language like, your other half, right?
Right.
Your other half, or, looking for someone to complete you, right?
There you go. Yep.
Again, my approach in terms of sovereign dating and being like your own functional self first before you try to love someone else, and having, this capacity in yourself first to love yourself and then to love others, rather than to be looking specifically for someone who completes you.
To complete
right?
you.
Or who is your other half. In my opinion, that kind of thinking leads to a lot of codependency.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know where we're going.
I know. I because codependency is the basis of you're dependent on that other person's. There's healthy codependency, meaning you meet my needs, physical needs, emotional needs. That's the law of attraction and the love languages and all that. But when you get down to what we're talking about, like becoming soulmates. This is a twin flame is if it exists at all, if the Greek mythology has any merit, would that be codependency, or are you saying twin flames just don't exist, period?
I mean, I who am I to say whether it exists or
Oh,
not?
yeah.
But I mean the approach, just in terms of this mindset, we can just say, I'm looking for someone from the other half of my soul.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that starts with the assumption of I'm incomplete. It starts with the assumption that I'm not whole, right? And that I need this other person to complete me. Right?
Yeah.
I need this other person to be with me, or else I'm not okay. And the sort of therapeutic word that is now being used is interdependent. So we want to create relationships that are interdependent in terms of like when my husband's gone, I'm sad. I'm just like, I wish he would come home and, we could have dinner at night and whatever. Like, I wish he didn't have a business trip,
Right.
But I'm okay. Right. Like I'm not falling apart.
You're not melting.
I'm not
melting.
Yeah. I'm not losing my shape. Exactly. That's a really good way to put that.
Yeah.
Like I'm still fine. I'm still my own human. I'm still doing my stuff. I'm, I'm living my life. Because yes, like when he's gone, I don't love that. And again, death, right? All relationships end. So sometime whether by breakup or death, we will be parted. And that's going to be hard, you know? But it's not this idea of like, I need him
Yeah.
in order to keep my shape. That's a really good way to put that. Or to be the person I'm supposed to be, right? It's like, I'm the person I'm supposed to be. Like, I am that. And, loving him is like this beautiful journey I get to be on in life, rather than, I don't know, there's something like drastic about like my soul is split if I don't have this other
Right.
human. And so, yeah, that's where I just feel the premise kind of sets you up for, the premise of Twin Flame sets you up for being in kind of a state of codependency. And maybe it exists, maybe not. I'm not connected enough at a spiritual soul level to see that or know that, you know. But just for me personally, that kind of language feels off.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. The only time that I would, and it's almost beautiful in a way. You hear stories where couples were married for, I don't know, let's say 70 years, and people in their late 80s or 90s, and the husband dies or the wife dies, and then literally the other half dies a month later. Mm-hmm. Because it's rare, but you hear those, sometimes you hear those. It's sad talking about death, but sometimes I hear it on the news that they were married, they were 100 years old, and when one passed away just naturally, the other one died a few weeks later. You hear these things. What would, I mean, we're kind of getting off topic here, but to me that sounds like they were so interconnected that they were dependent on each other for life. And I mean, it's a rare, I don't know how often that really happens, but mm-hmm. That to me, I don't know if I'd call that a twin flame. I would just call that true love or deep love, and their heart was so broken that.
Yeah, and also, you know, we get into these patterns. That happens actually, interestingly, more often for men than women. Like if the wife dies first, the man is more likely.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, that's why it's interdependent is a thing, because it's like there is a dependency. There is something about building your life with someone that, you know, it's the journey I wanted to take. That's why I got married, you know, is like, because I wanted to live my life with someone. Like I wanted to build that kind of partnership that, you know, maybe someday we would be like, yeah, it's not that fun without you.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like it's really not. So I absolutely think, you know, that's kind of, yeah, maybe a morbid but kind of beautiful occurrence in terms of like, yeah, that was a partnership that went so deep that it no longer was really exciting to be doing life without that other person.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, if you're with somebody for 70 something years, we're talking about lifetime, like a whole lifetime, and you shared everything. You see this sometimes on either Hallmark cards, or you'll see it. I live by the beach. I have seen elderly couples walking on the beach holding hands, and I look at that, and sadly, I'll say to myself, I'll never have that. You know, because you look at them and you see true love. You see, and I'm talking elderly, like not I'm 63. I'm talking 93 or 89 or something, whatever. And they're holding hands as if they still truly love each other. Unlike some couples who, when they get in their 60s and 70s, they don't even sleep in the same bed sometimes. But these elderly people that still love each other so deeply that they pass on from each other within weeks of each other. It's just, it's sad, but it's also beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay. boy, we kind of like got off the whole twin flames thing. um, but no, we're getting deep into talking about, well, we talked about, does the concept of soulmates and twin flames really exist? I agree with you. I don't think that the other half of my soul is walking around someplace. After my relationship did end, and I did do some mirror exercises, and many people told me, and you might have even been one of them, stay single for some time to respect yourself, to learn how to love yourself, to heal, to process. Because I never processed any of the relationship that I lost, and I've managed to stay single. God, it has to be 16, 17 months now. That yeah, I've gone on a few dates, but I'm talking about I have not jumped into a relationship, and I can't believe I'm saying this after 60 years on this earth, but I'm comfortable in my own skin now. I'm finally. Yeah. I don't think that there's somebody out there that is, let's say there's a pot for every kettle or whatever. There might be somebody out there for me, but they're not my other half. They're not. Yeah. There's nobody out there that's going to complete me. I need to complete me first.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, in my opinion, a really healthy place to come from. Like, that's really where you start to get into, now I'm ready to love someone, right? Now I'm ready to really love someone in the way that you could. You could meet someone who you can be with for 30 years, like depending on how long your life goes. None of us know how long that is, but, like you could absolutely find a true love relationship for the next 30 years of your life. And I think coming from that place of like, I know myself and I love myself, and now I'm ready to love you from that place.
Right.
That is what I think, that's like the juicy new relationship feeling, rather than this like, you need to do this and this and this and this, and that's, and here's your person and go love them. I think when you start from that place that you've just mentioned of like, yeah, I feel good in my skin, and I understand who I am, and I know Andrew. Now you can go love someone else in a way that's, that's life-changing love.
Yeah. And I would love to have that. If I can manage to squeeze out 30 more years on this earth and I can find somebody. But it's funny because I jumped from relationship to relationship because I didn't want to be alone. So if one relationship ended, I was right. My whole story is, but this whole podcast is about that. And this is the first time I've been single for this long in my life, other than a couple of my first year of sobriety. I stayed single, but I actually got sober because a woman kicked me out of her life that I was engaged to. So I stayed single that first year, only thinking that she would come back to me after I got sober, and she never did. So I don't even count that as being single for a year. I got sober for her.
Right.
And then ended up staying sober for myself, which was another whole story. So, okay, any final thoughts on this twin flames thing? You know what really bothers me is on both documentaries, the families that are Jeff and Shalia seem to tell these vulnerable people that I know you probably saw this in the documentary, that some of them they tell them that they were abused as children, and that your family is your enemy, and so they alienate you from your family. There were several moms on the documentaries whose daughters, I think sons and daughters, were in twin flames, and they received letters in the mail saying, "This is my last letter. Goodbye. Please don't contact me."
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to watch a mom, or I think there was a father too, to get a letter from your child to say, "I'm no longer going to be in contact with you." And some of these, we're talking young, 18, 19, 20,
Yeah. Yeah, so that's where we can get into talking about the cult stuff again. So we talked a little bit at the beginning of like very typical cult behavior is it starts slow, right? Like you first just start slow, then there's a community element. So you get kind of with other like-minded people, so to speak. And there's often in that community, there's certain language that's used that's special, like, like the mirror work and they're kind of these techniques that are like the in-group.
Right.
It's exclusive to this group, and this is how we talk. This is how we communicate, and this is how we think. So you get kind of this group think going on. And then another very significant sign of cult behavior is cutting you off from other people who have been in your life for a long time. And family is a super powerful thing to cut you off from, because there's something about the nuclear family that's like, that is some powerful human stuff. And, maybe it's just DNA, but also if you grew up with your family,
there's a young lady. I'm looking at my notes, and I don't see her name here, and it's probably better off that I don't mention it. But one of the women that are in Twin Flames is a twin, her twin sister, and she joined Twin Flames, and she wrote her a letter saying, please don't contact me. I think the twin sister reached out to her and said, "What are you doing? Why don't we?" And she said, "Stop." So it's almost ironic in the sense that a twin sibling, a genuine biological twin sibling, which have a whole spiritual connotation, because a lot of twins can like talk, finish each other's sentences and things like that.
Yeah.
Where it just boggles my mind that a twin, biological twin, would actually cut their own sibling off like that.
Yeah. Their actual twin.
Their actual twin, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another sign. That's not really love.
No,
the way
not
I
at
would
all.
define it is like, that's not. If being in love with the person you're in love with requires that you change your whole life and cut off everyone you've ever known,
no, that's not it.
That's usually a really bad sign. And usually it's a sign of abuse, actually. That's usually emotional abuse that's about to lead to physical abuse, is where that usually leads in general.
Yeah.
And then in that situation, it just seems to be, I won't say pervasive, because again, I think we probably got a little bit of a skewed version of the events based on the documentaries, but just given how often it is happening, like the frequency of it is just, that's disturbing.
It is very disturbing.
Really disturbing. So,
very disturbing.
Yeah, you got to be aware when people tell you they have all the answers and that it's got to be their way or the highway. When people start telling you to change who you are, that's also, a little bit should raise a few.
Sometimes physically change, because they actually have people transgendering, which that's something I have no problem with if you make that decision on your own. But Jeff and Shalia are telling these, so they'll assign a twin flame to you, same sex, and then tell that person to go have top surgery, and say you are now the masculine energy in that relationship. And these people go do this.
Oh, and that's why you brought me on too, because I teach feminine energy.
Okay.
Okay. So that teaching also, it is a sacred teaching of feminine and masculine energy, right? The yin and the yang, or yin yang, from ancient Asian teachings.
Philosophy,
yeah. And that's not how that stuff works.
No.
That is not how those energy teachings work. They are not about your physical appearance, right? They're not about gender. They have nothing to do with, how you present. That has changed very, very much in the last several thousand years. The way we present our gender has changed. So those teachings have nothing to do with, who you love, or how short your hair is.
Right.
That is not what the idea of masculine and feminine in terms of sacred. Like, I think they use divine, right? Divine
Right.
feminine, divine masculine. That is not what those teachings are about at all. All of the sacred teachings around that teach that we all have both, and that we just, we channel them differently through our bodies because we do have different anatomy. And it's about your personal power, right? It's about your sovereign power. It's not about who you love or what you look like. Like, that's not what those teachings are about, and that's not the goal of those teachings either. And in fact, in Hermetic teaching, which is sort of the Western line that interplays with the Hindu and the Tibetan teachings of feminine and masculine, the law of polarity is that all truths are but half-truths. Like, that's the actual law of polarity. So that's a really different take on that.
Wow.
Rather than like, oh, you're masculine, you better look like this, you better have this anatomy, you better love this kind of person. The law of polarity is that all truths are but half-truths, which is about moderation.
Okay.
It's like there are two poles, sure, like there's masculine and feminine, and then there's the middle ground, which is where we live.
So it's basically like a spectrum.
It's a spectrum, exactly. And maybe you fall to one side, maybe you fall to the other, maybe you land in the middle. And, it's not about forcing yourself to one side or the other.
Or the other.
Choosing, how to, physical traits to put on your body. Like, that is a perversion, actually. It's a perversion of those teachings, and very unfortunate perversion of those teachings. And I haven't talked to any of the people who have undergone that much transition, but I really hope they're okay. I really hope they're okay.
I don't know if this is a question that you can answer, but do you have any clients who have transgendered?
Not clients. No, I, to my knowledge, have only worked with people who identify as either man or woman.
Right.
Yeah, but I have friends and family members, so yeah.
There was a in one of the documentaries, and I think I can mention her name. Her name was Arcelia, and she was a trans into a woman prior to coming to Twin Flames, and she was interviewed in the Netflix documentary, and she even left the TFU because when they found out that she was trans, they embraced it. And then they actually took advantage of it, and she felt that she was they made her the poster child of, like, saying, if you are LGBTQ or trans, you can also join us. We'll find you the twin. I think, and that's where they kind of started going in that direction. And then Jeff and Shirley started pairing people because they made this guarantee to somewhere when you join that we'll guarantee you'll either find your twin flame or you whatever.
Right.
If after spending $1,000 you didn't find your twin flame, they would assign one to you, and it would be. It could, so if you were a female, they might assign another female, but tell that female you are now the male, the masculine energy.
Yeah.
And it would be like, wait a minute, you telling me that I now have to be a woman?
Yeah.
and yeah.
Right, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, that's not how those teachings work.
No.
And when someone's telling you who to love,
that's
just,
yeah.
Yeah. And even to have a guarantee like that, like, that's some good marketing. I tell you what, good marketing, because of course, $4,000 for your soulmate? That's like pennies for a lifelong love, right?
If you think about it,
that's pennies for lifelong love.
If you think about it, some matchmakers charge way more than that.
Oh, yeah.
Some elite matchmakings are up in $25,000, and we'll find your soulmate or a match. So
That's a steal. That's on sale.
Exactly. That's where I was headed for $4,000. But yet you have to go through the courses, and you have to do the mirror thing, and you have to also work for free, and there's all sorts of nonsense going on, and possibly transgender also.
Right.
So.
Right.
Okay, Alana, I could talk to you for another hour on this. I don't know why I'm fascinated by this, but it bothers me to the point, and I mentioned this to you earlier, that I belong to a couple of Facebook groups, and so I'm doing this investigation to help. I have spoken to some of the people that were in the documentary privately. I've asked some of them to come on the podcast. Some of them have, some of them haven't. But I'm just fascinated by this concept and how these two are just getting away with it.
Yeah.
And that there's nothing that the law, maybe law enforcement can't do anything about it, but there's.
Well, I think what you're doing. Well, I'll just interrupt. Sorry.
Sure. No, I'm babbling.
Because it's not law enforcement that can fix this. It's just people's awareness that, this is cult behavior, and this is not a guarantee to find someone you really love and are attracted to and can go the distance with. That's not what you're signing up for when you join that group. And so the more people are aware that's not,
Yeah.
You can't spend $4,000 and get a soulmate.
Thank you. And that's why some of the people in the Facebook group wanted to know what my agenda was in doing this, and I said just to continue the conversation and get the more people that are aware, because while after the documentary I heard that their sales dipped a little bit, but they're still doing fine. They got people joining them, so. I just wanted to mention something about cults. You probably have heard of this. There are people, and usually they're alcoholics, who look at AA as a cult. They'll say AA, that's just a cult. And being a member of AA, I can tell you it's not, because they don't make you do anything. All they have is suggestions, and if anything, they suggest you highly go back to your family and make amends and reconnect with your family and yada, yada, yada. So
you're also free to go at any time.
You're free to...
without, experiencing backlash from your community.
No, there's nobody that will talk dirty, down, and angry at you and call you... there was one YouTube video that they showed where Jeff actually... The woman was crying because... She was depressed and she couldn't find her twin flame, and Jeff called her an effing pussy. Yeah. And and I think the mother was watching. That's what it was. One of the mothers was watching her daughter on YouTube talking to Jeff, and the mother just was on. How could you be? And then he calls himself the second coming of Christ, and then they take a picture of him with long hair. And they put a picture next to Jesus, and they say, "Look, he looks just like Jesus."
Yeah.
The marketing on this is just, I have to say, I think he's a genius.
Yeah.
But a psychologically disturbed genius,
Well, many geniuses are psychologically disturbed.
Yeah. So
it's too bad he's using it for this purpose,
Yeah.
And that's really a shame. But I think just the more people who know, this is what cults do, right? Because, and even larger picture, not just these people, but this is what cults do in general. And this happens not just in twin flame situations, but also if you are in that place of desperation and sadness and heartbreak and loneliness, that's not the place to turn. No. That's the real message. Is that's not the place to turn. Find anything else.
A free support group.
Yeah.
Any kind of support group that you don't have to pay anything. There are so many support groups out there today. Self-help groups. I'm obviously in the 12-step one, but there are so many that are non-12-step based. Almost every ailment or every disease or every situation out there, there's a support group.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all you really need. But I just paying all this money to be abused, and yeah, it's just sad. So
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I was telling you, like, those episodes just made me cry for those people who, are being abused.
Yeah.
Like, they're being abused. And
I will make a prediction that I would hope that within a matter of years, this organization will come crumbling down. They're going to make a mistake somewhere.
Cults do. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Cults always crumble. And
Yeah.
so that's the hope. But it can take work and expose, like Amazon, Netflix, and you are doing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, by doing this, I'm hoping another podcast will pick up on it, and another one, and there's estimation of I think there's an estimation of 5 million podcasts are currently circulating around the world, and I obviously can't listen to them all, but I don't hear this being talked about among any of them, and that's all I'm trying to do is keep the narrative going, the conversation going, and bringing it to another medium, and hopefully that another medium will just keep snowballing and make more people aware, because the more people are aware, that maybe they won't fall for this. And hopefully there's somebody who's heartbroken, who lost a loved one through heartbreak, not through death, but through heartbreak, or possibly don't fall for this type of cult or organization / cult. So, all right, Alana, I think we're going to wrap it up.
sounds good.
All right, and just quickly tell us where we can find you online.
So I am at sovereign-dating.com or Sovereign Dating, Instagram, YouTube, all over the map. And you can also find my book, The Art of Feminine Seduction, wherever books are sold.
I was just going to mention, please mention your book. And I see that in the background over your shoulder, The Art of Feminine Seduction. Is that something that I should read? Is it for male or female?
It's written specifically for straight women, but again, the teachings of feminine and masculine are not about your gender or sex or sexuality.
Right.
So,
okay.
While it is, the language in it is for straight women seeking men, seeking long-term partnership with men, in fact, too. Kind of the other secret is it's for anyone who has a shadow, is what I call it, around seduction, which is how to get what you want in love, like in romantic love.
Okay.
Because seduction feels very, very, there's a lot of power stuff in there. Like our conversation's been a lot about power. There's a lot of stuff about power in that word. And so it's kind of about deconstructing the way we conceptualize power in relationships. And for people who are, feminine women or who have that core sexuality, can help you reconnect with the feminine aspect of yourself. And also for men, because many men have disconnected from the feminine side of themselves too. So
I just realized that I did get some emails from some of my listeners from women, and they said that I had too many male dating coaches on, and they would like me to have a female dating coach on. And I just realized that you are one of them, and I am going to, and just for the audience knows, we did record an episode back in September that I'll be releasing right after this episode. So Alana, you're going to get a double dose of Alana over the next 7 days. So she'll be.
Andrew answered.
Yeah. And so to the people who have asked for female dating coaches, I not only did I bring you one, I brought you to her twice, and she's got an awesome book out that you can purchase and read, and I think you'll get something out of that. So, Alana, thank you for joining me again today, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Andrew, for this conversation.
My pleasure.
Well, we want to thank Alana, first of all, for coming on the show, on Andrew's show. And then I want to say that I really like that she spoke about the process of indoctrination and about how they prey on people and specifically look for and prey on vulnerabilities. She spoke about people that are seeking for answers or looking to fill some kind of void, whether that's a religious void or a love void or meditation, politics, spirituality, whatever it is, they want to fill that void for you.
And this is why I wanted somebody like an expert guest to come on and give her 2 cents in on cults, because at the time it was just mind-boggling. It's still mind-boggling to me today, but now that we have this new show, I'm starting to really learn more. And there was a real shock factor with TFU and then starting. There still is. I mean, because as we talked about, even watching some of the recordings that we do, like we tell the audience, you hear it, but we see them. Watching some of these people tell their stories, it's just you squirm because you can see the pain, the trauma in their body language, and it's hard to watch sometimes. So, but anyway, thank you to Alana.
And the other thing I want to point out that she mentions in her thing is that she talks about how looking for someone to complete you opens you up for codependency in a relationship and an unhealthy connection. And I want to say that
Right.
can also ring true of cults. Looking for a place or a community to complete you can leave you vulnerable in that way. So that's another one of those parallels that I talk about between being in an unhealthy relationship. Really, being in a cult is being in an unhealthy relationship with a group. And I like that she touched on that we don't want to look for someone to complete you, because it does open you up for that unhealthy codependency.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, again, thank you, Alana, for your insight.
And once again, we'd love it if you could show your support for our show by giving us a rating on either Apple or Spotify. And if you could please follow, share, and continue listening to all of our latest episodes.
And please show your support by joining our Facebook community group under the name Cultimatum. If you'd like to share your story with us, you can email us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you're an ex-cult member looking to find support, you can find more support at Cult Escape and Recovery Group on Facebook.
And since you heard a little bit of the Anonymous Andrew podcast, if you'd like to hear more, you can find me at Anonymous Andrew Podcast, Life and the Choices We Make. And of course, I'm on the same platforms that you're listening to this podcast right now. All right, Melody?
Yep. Thank you.
We're good. All right, thank you. We'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Thanks, Alana.